Cool. So today's guest is Billy Mays the Third.
What's up, y'all?
What's up, bro?
So for everyone listening, tell everyone who you are and a little bit about your background.
I'm a musician, and I perform locally and somewhat nationally as my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Oh shit, represent.
Yeah, that's where he's
I'm
from.
from
For real?
Yeah.
No way.
Hell yeah.
When did you
I moved to
leave
Florida
there?
when I was like 10, but I moved here with just my mom, so I would always go back in the summer, the winter, all year long.
Nice, man.
Yeah, all my
Yeah.
family still lives there.
Cool. Yeah, me
Love
too.
it there.
I love Pittsburgh.
Hell yeah.
It's awesome there. It's too cold though.
Yeah, it can be. I moved down here when I was 18 for college. I went to Full Sail in
Okay.
Orlando, which is like I don't know. It's like
Yeah,
a
I looked into
technical
going
type
there
college.
actually
Yeah.
way back in the
Yeah.
day.
So I went for recording arts and entertainment business.
Yeah.
And I had a bachelor's degree by the time I was 20, which I find to be kind of useless, but
Yeah.
I never had to tell anyone that I had a degree to get work or to do what I do, but it was a good experience. And then I sort of moved over to the Tampa area when I was 20, and I've been here ever since, on and off, with a little bit of travel in there and touring.
How did you get into making music and doing what you do? I remember, I think one of the biggest things that hit me, which I thought was like a really good introduction to who you are, was the Full Sail video that you did. And you talk about the first album you made in 2009, and you talk about your relationship with your family and the process of making that album, and how did that point in time kind of like kick off where you are now?
Yeah.
Was that kind of like a turning point for you?
Yeah, I kind of look at that as the launching point. I had actually made other albums that I didn't really release in any capacity. When I was in high school, I was making albums on like the most primitive gear and like 8-track digital recorders and guitar, and I had no knowledge of what to do. But the one thing that I felt like I did intuitively was, one, songwriting, like instrumental songs, and two, structuring those songs into albums. Like
Okay.
with I always feel like I've been drawn to the sequencing of tracks on an album. Like that's something that I'm just like super passionate about, and when I'm listening to music, I feel like I'm always taking in the information of why they started with this song and why this track 3 is really strong, and the arc, and what they say for the end. And I'm always thinking like that too for my stuff. So I was always doing that, and then by the time 2009 came around, well, that was a big year for me anyway in life. I had lost all of my gear, all of my music gear, everything I owned, in an apartment fire in February of 2009.
Wow. In Orlando?
No.
Is this when you were going to school? No, not when you were going to school.
No, I guess I had been over here for about 3 years maybe, and I had just gotten an apartment on my own. I was living with my dad for a while, and then I finally got my apartment on my own in kind of the Clearwater area.
Okay.
And within 2 weeks of moving in, my whole apartment building burned down.
God damn.
And it turned out to be arson.
Really?
And my dad thought that maybe someone was targeting him, and we have the same name.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be,
Someone trying to
from what we know, it turned out to be the apartment that I moved into. Somebody had gotten evicted after like 10 years from living there, and people had seen him circling around in the days leading up to it. And then they definitely found that there was accelerant used in the fire, and they never caught the guy, I don't think. For all I know, I think he skipped town or something. They were looking for him. He was the person of interest. But thankfully, nobody was really injured. I think like my neighbor tried to save too much of his stuff and like got burned in his arm just slightly, and then his dog also like wouldn't come down the steps.
Oh shit.
But anyway, my apartment was like kind of the target. So
I remember you saying you like looked back once you got out and you saw the place literally engulfed.
I literally like I
You
didn't
were
really,
in there when it
was
caught
like
fire?
3 a.m.
Okay.
And I'll never forget because I had watched Donnie Darko that night, which involves a big house fire. And so I woke up kind of inexplicably around 3 a.m. and I ran to the front door of the apartment, and I didn't hear a knock or anything. I was kind of just like, what's going on? I was like in a daze, and I opened the door, and my neighbor, who was also a maintenance guy at the apartment, was like, hey, there's a fire. You got to get your stuff and go. And I was like, all right. And I went and got my girlfriend, who was there at the time, and I said, hey, grab your backpack. Like, we got to go. And I didn't grab anything except my phone, wallet, keys, and a digital camera that I had sitting on the nightstand. And I made it, by the time I made it back to the door, the whole stairs were covered.
Damn.
Like, I wouldn't have been able to walk through these flames. This was like, I thought, oh shit, well now we have to like think about jumping out the window or something. But thankfully the maintenance guy was like much more lucid and awake. He ran and got a fire extinguisher and sprayed it just enough to get it down, and my girlfriend and I just ran past, and by the time we turned around, which was like 30 seconds later, it had already spread all over the roof, and like where we were sleeping was already like, if we would have been dead if we hadn't woken up, you know, like it was,
God.
the smoke inhalation would have been crazy. So we turned around, and we were the first ones out, but we were also the first apartment to really go. And then it took another like, I don't know, 30 minutes or so for the whole place to burn down. Everyone started evacuating, and it was only 2 floors, so it was kind of small.
Yeah.
But I remember kind of just being in shock and my, like kind of laughing at the fact that like some of my stuff was still just in boxes, and so it probably just went up in flames like super easily and all at once. And I called my friend who had built me a custom guitar. It was a custom built guitar for my hands, and he spent a year making it, a year of his life making it, and it was sitting right there, and I didn't grab it. And he was the first person I called at like 3 a.m. And I'm like, dude, I'm watching the apartment burn down and the guitar's in there. And he was like super upset, and I was like, I think I'm gonna, like, once they put out the fire, maybe I'll go back up and be able to save it. And he's like, dude, no, that had a lacquer finish on it that hadn't even dried yet. Like, it takes months to dry. So he's like, if any flame got near it, it probably just went straight up in flames.
Oh my God, dude. That's terrifying.
Yeah. So
what did you do after that?
I just sort of, I guess I sort of just started from scratch. I
mean, all your equipment, you had probably a lot of expensive shit.
Yeah, I had a studio, and I had like cameras and stuff like that. Stuff I had built up, you know, in like over 5 years or so or more. And thankfully, well, okay, I also lost all my clothes. I lost,
Oh God.
like stupid stuff that you wouldn't consider. Like I had like a pair of sandals that I was wearing when I left, and then like the shirt that I was wearing. And then I realized like I don't have any underwear. I don't have anything. So I think Salvation Army was there, or the Red Cross or something. It was the Red Cross. They were there, and they were able to write checks for like $140 to everyone that lived in the complex or in that building. So I went and bought some t-shirts and stuff like that. But I'll tell you what, the as horrible as that was and traumatic, and I was like, I would have panic attacks when I smelt fire for like a couple weeks afterwards. There was still like a really,
Bring this a little bit closer to
Oh, sorry.
Just lift, you can like force it up a little bit.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
You gotta like really tighten it.
Cool.
Cool.
Good.
Yeah. Perfect.
As bad as that was, it was kind of freeing to not own anything for a bit.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like,
Just like to start clean.
A minimalist.
yeah, totally. And I think it kind of messed with my whole perception of possessions for a while. But obviously, you know, you always build back up and get new stuff. So
Right.
to answer your question, my dad helped me get back on my feet with like the bare essentials. And for me, that was like some clothes. And I ended up just like staying at my girlfriend's mom's house or something because it was close by, like for maybe a few months. And my dad got me a guitar and an amp, like pretty cheap amp, pretty decent guitar. And like, that's all I had. I didn't really have like effects pedals anymore. So it like kind of stripped everything down. And like, I was super lucky to even have that, but it kind of helped me therapeutically just start from scratch and process the weird emotions about the fire.
Yeah.
Like through music without trying to, you know, be cool or anything. I was just kind of like making music to have fun again, or not to have fun, to meditate and to process.
Wow. Were you
So-
working at the time? Like, what were you?
Yeah, I was a freelance production assistant
Okay.
in TV.
And that's how you got into production, because your dad kind of like brought you along and showed you the ropes and
Yeah.
brought you on sets.
He
and
kind of just brought me on set one day for a Kaboom commercial and was like, introduced me to the production manager, who I actually knew from when I was a kid. And he was just like, put him to work. And I was like,
Oh, that's awesome.
I just did what I could. And like, I didn't even really know how to like paint walls and stuff. And that's what they wanted me to do. So I had to like learn like really basic things, because I didn't go to school for that. I went to school for more on the music side. So that stuff didn't really, but at the same time, I learned more about life and work and technology from just getting thrown into it, and
Right.
trying to figure it out. So yeah, I was working freelance production as much as I could at that time. And
Were you doing a lot of the kind of in the infomercial world, or were you doing okay?
big time infomercial world, and like some more high budget commercials.
Yeah.
Like all Florida based stuff, and it's kind of a hub down here for
It is.
infomercials. So I guess that has to do with it.
Yeah, it definitely is. After your apartment burns down, your dad helps you out getting some new stuff. You have no clothes, and you're just making music as a hobby. Like now you're doing it kind of like just as like a therapeutic thing to get through that loss. Or
Well, it turns out that I always was doing it as a hobby, but I think this is when it clicked as like emotional practice, like something I need to do, rather than I'm just doing it because it's what I like to do. And it kind of connected my life experiences to my expression. And like that moment was when it kind of, looking back, that would be like the turning point of like, oh, now I'm making like real music. Like before I was kind of just doing the activity of making music, and now I felt like I was making like what I would consider art.
Right.
And that it was connected to the creator more.
So for people who don't understand exactly how it works, can you explain the exact process and how you make music, like with the instruments and the sampling and all that?
Yeah. I actually, back then I really wasn't doing it this way. I was sort of always a one-man band, but I don't really know if there even was that good a technology for live looping back then. So what I would do is I would kind of just layer the shit out of guitar, and it would be as though there were 8 guitar players playing at the same time, but they were all me.
Yeah.
Like, so that's how I started, and that's how I that's how I got any kind of thing resembling big sound back then, like in high school even and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was like always kind of starting on like a self-taught method that probably wasn't the best way to do things. But I guess I did have a looper back then in 2009.
The red Roland, the fucking
I think
guitar
I did.
pedal one.
I think I did have that one.
That was the one everyone had.
Yeah, like the RC
20 or something. Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I had the RC 50.
Yeah.
But that was, so what it is you press a button with your foot, and it records what's happening, and then as soon as you press it again, it just keeps looping that thing.
It just keeps playing it over and over again.
And you can keep layering over it, and there's all kinds of options of tracks, and depending on what one you have. And now I would say like 5 years after that, Boss put out a really special one called the RC 505, which is sort of the standard now for tabletop loopers.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's all hand based, and that's kind of what I use now for everything. I use for my infinite third sets, which are guitar looping and beats on the spot. I use that, and then for mouth console, this other thing that I do, it's really just the RC 505 and a microphone, and it involves other people and just voices.
Okay.
And so that's where I've gotten to since 2009. But back then, I guess I was into more like, I was getting into more ambient music, and I guess
I love that. Like I told you when I first met you, I really got an Aphex Twin vibe from it.
Yeah.
He does the same thing. He'll do his massive live sets, and he'll just sit in the corner of the stage with his little whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then he just like makes little, and there's just like literally there's hundreds of thousands of people in the crowd. And he's just sitting there just like in his own little world.
Yeah, and Aphex Twin is amazing, and there's a couple other producers like that I would say that I am influenced by. Fortet, it takes a lot for me to like really get into an artist that's like kind of like leans more towards like the DJ world, because I feel like you have to like really recognize their vibe that they bring, even if they're sampling or, you know.
Yeah.
remixing or whatever. They
Yeah.
always kind of have their stamp of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think besides that, I was listening to like Sigur Rós,
Mm-hmm.
Explosions in the Sky, Mogwai, and bands like that. And I think
I love Mogwai.
that opened up. Yeah, Mogwai is one of my favorite bands, and I think that opened up that style of like instrumental music, like epic instrumental music for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first album came out in December of 2009.
The same year that your apartment.
Yeah,
burned
well, okay, well then I guess the ending of that portion of the story is that I got back on my feet after the fire,
Okay.
and I think it was June. Well, no. Yeah, it was June, beginning of June, end of May that I moved into a new apartment finally, and I
Okay.
kind of like was getting back on my feet.
in Clearwater.
This is in Dunedin.
Okay.
So close to Clearwater, and just getting settled in, kind of like building up my collection of items and furniture and stuff like
Yeah.
that slowly. And then in June of 2009, my dad just passed away unexpectedly at the age of 50. So that was sort of heavy to like tack on to that moment. It was obviously like
Jesus.
would have been
Yeah.
bad on its own. But like the fire was almost like really manageable.
Yeah,
And then I
compared-
survived.
compared to that, yeah.
And then, you know, when my dad died, it was sort of like a thing. Like it was like a lot of complication just around life at that point with even in my work and all
How
that
old were
with
you?
it. I was 22. I think I was 22.
Fuck.
I think I turned 23 in August of that year. So, yeah, that was like the 1-2 punch of
Yeah.
2009 that I look back at as one of the most important years of my life, like not just for shitty reasons, because also at that time I sort of solidified what I wanted to do with my life, with music and stuff. And without having much experience or knowledge or wisdom yet, I kind of set out to like finish this album by the end of the year. And I was able to do that. It's called Gently. The album's called Gently.
Mm.
And some of it was being written even before my dad died. So I kind of just like kept going down the,
Mm-hmm.
you know, let it keep avalanching down the hill once
Yeah.
he died. And it was like all I had to really like focus on that I cared about. So I did that, and it was a pretty strong album. I still look back at it and I'm like, damn, there was something special going on, because I can't even recreate some of that stuff now. I don't know what I was doing, but I think I was just so focused and zoned in on completing that task, not even knowing how important it would be for like the future and like what I was building. But
So
yeah.
that album kind of like just, would you say that album like reflects that whole year for you? or like what you were feeling?
Yeah. It's kind of a pretty deep sounding album, like emotionally, but it's surprisingly uplifting and optimistic, which I guess you could say is how I felt in 2009, was like surprisingly optimistic in the wake of all that, because it kind of like, I feel like it kind of woke me up, whereas I didn't really know what I was doing with my life so much. I kind of had like a vague idea that I wanted to make music and stuff, and I was kind of just going along with life.
Yeah.
And I think when those two things happened, it sort of like jolted me to like just reflect on what I want to do and how I want to do that. And I'm thankful for it, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today without going through all that shit.
Right. I can't imagine like, that moment when you find out that your dad passed away. I mean, it has to feel like it wasn't even real, or like you were in a dream or something.
Oh,
or like
totally.
it was just like,
Yeah. I can remember the morning. My dad was actually, he had a really bad hip. Not many people know this. He had a horrible hip, and he got his hip replaced twice, the same hip. And like his body was like rejecting it. And it like, the first time it just didn't work. And then the second time he got a staph infection.
Damn.
And like, it was pretty messed up. And then he had his third hip replacement, where they told him, this is the last one we can do. If it doesn't work, you might not be able to walk. Like,
fuck.
so that Monday he was scheduled in the morning to have this hip surgery, and then Saturday night he got in from doing all this traveling to shoot last minute commercials before he was going to be down for a while, and he got in to Tampa Airport. It's kind of a funny thing, you can look it up.
Is that the video where the plane?
His plane,
The
the
wheel-
wheel blew out on landing,
Yeah.
and like the suitcases fell out, and he got hit on the head with his own suitcase or like other people's suitcases.
Damn.
And And then they even interviewed him, like local news interviewed him coming off the plane because they were like, oh, notable local guy, Billy Mays was on the plane. And so he has this like really just exhausted look on his face. And I know what he's going into at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And he called me and we had this long talk. He was just like happy to be alive. And he was talking about like, we're just going to get this hip done. And then we're going forward with all these business things where I was going to help him with a lot of the kind of the PR stuff. With
Oh, really?
Basically the website that I run now, billymays.org, is probably a version of what I would have made with him had he still been alive. Was just sort of collecting his work. You know, that's kind of what it was.
Okay.
Because nobody was doing that. And so that happened. And then that night I was super anxious, not about the plane. I thought, whatever, the plane, he got lucky and that happened. And
Right.
I remember feeling like super anxious just about the hip surgery, thinking something might go wrong or whatever.
You're worried about him.
Might not walk again or something.
Yeah, totally. And then I was telling my girlfriend about it, and I was kind of like panicky, and I felt like my chest was like, you know how when you have anxiety, you're like I started to get really worried that I had like a problem going on.
Really?
So to calm down, I think I turned my phone off, which I never did. I turned my phone off for the night and went to bed. We wake up Sunday morning, and my girlfriend gets a call from her mom that says, hey, Billy needs to call his mom. She can't get a hold of him. Everything's okay. Just call her. And I'm like, okay, everything's okay. So I call her, and she answers the phone crying and basically telling me that they found my dad dead when he woke up, or he never woke up that night. And it's funny because he was traveling and he just made it home that night, and he finally got home and then died, which we all look back at as such weird timing. It would have been way worse if he had died in like a hotel room or something, you know,
somewhere else out of state or.
Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of just devastating. And then I was talking to, you know, a bunch of phone calls coming in that day, and it was just a pretty surreal day. It was.
Had to have been a surreal like couple months.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a surreal life,
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's. I can remember. I had a BlackBerry at the time. This was my phone, and like, I had just gotten on Twitter maybe in like March of that year, and it was just starting out, and it wasn't really like a big thing yet, but it was pretty awesome still to like be on Twitter. And I got my dad on Twitter.
Oh,
like,
really?
Maybe a month or two before he died. We actually found someone was doing a parody account, and then we asked that kid if we could just take that account because he had gotten a bunch of followers.
Did he have like the Billy Mays handle?
He had real Billy Mays.
Okay.
So we wanted to get that because it was already kind of established.
Is it
too.
still a thing?
I think so. You can go on it, and it's funny because if you look back at the tweets, there's an undefined moment where before this moment, it was just this kid tweeting what he thought my dad would tweet. And then there's a moment where it becomes actually my dad. Like, I think I'm still in touch with the dude.
That's
His name's
sick.
Mark, if Mark's watching this. We're like connected on social media. But like, I think we maybe sent him some swag or something. But
That's hilarious.
but then like my dad would tweet like kind of goofy things. He would just be like, it was always like, going to LA today, gonna shoot commercial. Thank you to all my fans, like stuff like that. He was
From
just,
a BlackBerry, it takes like 20
yeah,
minutes
totally.
to type
Yeah.
one sentence.
And he was a total boomer, like just in general about this kind of stuff. Tech wise, he would like, he didn't type. He typed with fingers, you know. Like,
Yeah,
going
just
like
pointer
that.
fingers.
Yeah, and you know, it was amazing that he even was able to get emails for his work stuff. And he didn't have an agent or anything. Like
Really?
I think he had an agent that he worked some of the bigger deals with towards the end. Like he had the Discovery Channel deal and a few other bigger deals that finally just required an agent.
Right.
But like he was doing so many handshake deals with his
Really?
infomercials.
That's sick.
That's hilarious, man.
So anyway, the BlackBerry thing is notable because I actually tweeted within an hour of getting the news that my dad didn't wake up this morning, because people were following me because of my dad on Twitter, and it was like a
Right.
Pitchman thing. I was on the Pitchman show on Discovery Channel, so we had like this little fan base that was growing.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to be like, you know, the in between, because my dad didn't really know how to interact in a quick way, so I would just do that. So on Twitter, I posted that, and then I see it popping up on the news stations. I was the confirmation that my dad died. And really, it wasn't confirmation because I wasn't verified or anything. So they just started running with it, and they were using that tweet as verification. You'd see screenshots of my tweet on CNN and all this stuff. And this was kind of like, I feel like it's when we discovered this whole like mass grieving of celebrities was right around this time, because it was Michael Jackson died 3 days earlier.
Yeah.
What?
On the 25th, yeah, and my dad died on the 28th. And like literally in my last conversation with my dad, he's like, "You heard Michael Jackson died?" I was like, "Yeah, that's crazy." And then it became that. And then
And the
like,
news just like just blew it up.
yeah, Ed McMahon, Farrah Fawcett, Patrick Swayze.
So they're like tweeting you and stuff?
Well,
or?
no, they were all dead. They were
okay.
celebrities that died that summer.
Oh,
and
God.
so that's why later on there's a South Park episode called Dead Celebrities, and it was the season premiere of one of the seasons where my dad was heavily featured in it, but it had all these celebrities in it,
That's
including
sick.
Michael Jackson. Their ghosts
Yeah.
were like haunting
Haunting
the kids.
That's so sick.
It's amazing. And so anyway, somehow my tweet made it to Alyssa Milano, who was a big tweeter at the time.
Okay.
And she basically just said, "Hey, go give Infinite Third some love. He lost his dad today." And that was like a really nice thing, but I had notifications on, and it literally bricked my BlackBerry for like 6 hours. I couldn't call anyone. I was at my dad's condo. We had finally made it there, but as that was happening, the way the notifications came in, it
Just
wasn't really
blowing up.
prepared for that many. And it was like I went from like 1,000 followers to like 15,000 followers in like
BlackBerry smoking.
over a few hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of like made me not able to tell more people, like my family and stuff, which is funny. But yeah, that's kind of a funny, like that's how it dispersed through the world, was through my tweet.
Yeah.
And
That's funny how stuff works.
yeah, so
It seems like you and your dad were really close.
we were super close.
Like
yeah.
super like personal and business. Seems like you helped him out with a lot of.
I think that was where it was going. Like,
Yeah.
I was just like filling the role of, wow, nobody's really thinking about this stuff, and I'm here and I care about it, so I should do that. And he was super on board. And I mean, I did like travel with him. The last time I saw him actually was in LA.
Really?
The week he died, he went on the Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien, when Conan had a short stint hosting the Tonight Show.
I tried finding that. I couldn't find that interview.
Damn. It was him and Anthony Sullivan. They were
Okay.
promoting Pitchman. And a couple times before that, he was on Jay Leno's Tonight Show.
I saw that one.
And that was cool. But I told him, I don't care to go for that, but if you ever get on Conan, you got to fly me out, because I was like a huge Conan fan.
Yeah.
And I still am. And the minute he got booked for Conan, he just called me and he's like, "Hey, I'm getting you a ticket. Like, we're going."
That's sick.
So I went out to LA, had this great time, met Conan, hanging out backstage and stuff.
Oh, that's
and
so cool.
That night we were all celebrating that moment, and that was the last night that a lot of us saw him, because then we all went our
Wow.
separate ways, and
Yeah.
he went and shot all these commercials. And so, yeah, we were close. He was a huge supporter of like me doing music and stuff.
Was he really?
Yeah. Unfortunately, he never really got to hear my good music,
Yeah.
but he heard some of the stuff that I worked on in the years before that, and he was just like unconditionally supportive of it, you know. And my mom was like that too, and they're divorced since I was like 3, but they both kind of had this like really heavy support, just because I was the only child, and I feel like, I don't know, they were just good like that. And I lived with my mom growing up, so my dad was kind of like this traveling, I see him when I see him kind of thing.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Because he did the home and garden shows. That was like his thing. He was like a carny, basically like going and pitching on boardwalks and traveling
really?
home shows. Yeah, he would pitch products. He would get a booth at these things.
Like trade shows or?
Yeah, kind of like but just like gadgets, like
Okay.
for your home. Like you go and you look at refrigerators and stuff, but you also look at like choppers and things like
Okay.
that. So when I was growing up, when I was a baby, he was doing the Washmatic, which was a hose that goes in a bucket so you can wash your car on the fly without having a hose nearby, and you pump it and it uses like gravity to shoot water at your car.
Oh shit.
And he was great at the demo. He like learned from the veterans how to do this demo. And so there's pictures of him holding me as a baby and like
Oh, yeah.
doing
Really?
the thing
And
at a
doing
trade
it
show
with
on
one
like
hand?
on a standalone car door that they bring in to
Oh,
do, 'cause
that's
they don't bring a whole
legendary.
car and thing.
Yeah.
So they used to call him Bucket Billy. And I remember there's like shirts of him. His says Bucket Billy and mine says Little Bucket Billy. I gotta
That's
find
sick.
that. So that was the product that I knew him for as a baby. But then when I was closer to becoming a teen, maybe like 11, 12, he was doing the Salsa Master, which was basically a food processor that you'd crank with your hands.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great product, and I think it's still around. And his demo was just making salsa all day, and so I would hang out when he would come to Pittsburgh for the home show. That would be like the most time that I would spend with him, and I'd like bring my friend, and he would buy us all these like X-Men toys and or whatever we were into at the time, wrestlers or Star Wars or whatever, and we'd go on like a spree because he was just like trying to make up for not being around. And we'd play in the hotel and swim, and then during the days we would go and hang out at the home show and like hang out under the booth, like playing with toys and stuff, because it wasn't that much space.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like ingrained into me what he did.
Wow.
Yeah, that's cool as hell.
And you could like try the salsa. That was like part of that was how you get people to come to the booth. It's like free salsa. So in between we would just eat this salsa. It was salsa. Like it was amazing salsa. We'd make like a spicy one and a mild one. And my dad legit made really good salsa.
Really?
So yeah, and it was probably from making it so much with that.
Oh my gosh.
So that was the times between the home shows, and then he lived in Florida, in Clearwater. We would come down and visit him in the summer sometimes for like a couple weeks.
Okay.
And so that was the time that I saw him. It wasn't really like shared custody. It was like my mom raised me, and then my dad, I would just see him when I could. But thankfully they always got along. And
that's good.
Yeah. But yeah, so then we were close. We were I guess what happened was then when I was 18 and I came down for college, it was kind of like the handoff, and now he was going to try to make up for some of the time that he didn't get to spend with me. So
that's awesome.
I moved in with him after college, and really it's like for the last 5 years of his life, we finally got to become like friends and like, you know, best friends. And so I'm thankful that I got that time with him, because I think about it and I'm like, you know, I didn't really know him that well. I didn't know him as an adult, and I got that time because I moved down here. So
what was it?
Makes sense.
What was it like living? Was he like a baller, or what was his house like?
He kind of like he thought he was like. I look at some of his financial decisions and I just think
that wasn't a good one.
I can't if I get money like that, I'm never gonna do that.
Like what? Like give me an example.
He bought a pretty. By the time he made it, I'm guessing it was about 5 years before he died, and it's the house that I moved into. It was like kind of a mansion, like in Odessa, Florida. He had it built, and it was a super nice house. It was like Florida style house. So I don't know if I like the architecture so much, but it had like a movie theater in it, and
what?
Yeah, like a 8-seat movie theater, and like just cool shit like that.
That's so cool.
But I think his stupid investments was that he would lease cars. So he would always have like 4 cars at a time in the time, like, and this only lasted a few years. He would have like a Bentley and a Range Rover and an Escalade and like a BMW, and like they all had different purposes. Cars. Yeah, he would lease them, and it was like such an expense. And like looking back, it's probably why, you know, there was no huge fortune for me to for me to take when he died. But then again, I think it was just his thing of like.
I would have loved to see a Billy Mays Cribs episode.
Dude, it would have been awesome. He was so poor growing up, and like just lived in McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, which is like a noteworthy town for like, you know, not good things. Yeah. And so I think he hustled so much, and then when he finally got that money, he just wanted to like kind of prove it and live it up, you know, and like enjoy it. And I think he just loved showing up at a place in a Bentley, but like then also being this down to earth dude. He'd like let people check it out. And I remember he got remarried when I was in high school, and he had a Rolls Royce at the time. He had a Phantom, and that was like he had like, I think back then he only had like 2 cars at a time, but the Phantom he had was probably the sickest car he ever had. Yeah. I remember at his rehearsal dinner for the wedding, they're coming out of, I think it's called Maggiano's down at West Shore Plaza. Yeah. So we're coming out of there, and the valet pulls up his Rolls Royce, and everyone starts to realize who it is. And he was like pretty famous at the time. He spends like way too much time signing autographs for these kids on his Rolls Royce Phantom, like signing it on them and like letting them get in, and like letting their parents check it out. And like it just became this big scene. And everyone's like rolling their eyes, like all the family and stuff, like, oh, here he goes.
Dude, that's awesome.
So this shit like that would happen all the time. But I think he enjoyed sharing, like, hey, this is what it's like. You can just like when you have luxury. And then he would like try to help people out and
Yeah.
and
That's super
let
cool.
them experience it too.
That's amazing. You've done your part to kind of like, from that point in 2009, you kind of like made a decision that you're going to obviously make a huge turning point, but you kind of like carried out his legacy, or you kind of like, it seems like you took the ball from there and you ran with it in your own way, you know, with the music, like with that new album.
Oh yeah. I think I do find crazy, probably things that people wouldn't really understand unless you like have my memories and stuff. But like I feel crazy, like unexpected parallel vibes of his life at this age and my life now.
Really?
And how I always thought, no, I'm not going to become a pitchman. I'm not going to be.
Right.
I'm not going to do what he did. I'm more of an artist, musician.
Yeah. You know, he was an artist and a performer in his own way.
Totally.
It was
Yeah.
like, it's super interesting.
Yeah. And like he wrote a lot of the commercials as well.
Did he really?
Yeah, that was like, because I mean, it was his pitch being distilled into like these little presentations. So he was big on the wording of it and the demos. So I always tried to like distance myself from it. Like right after he died, I was like, no, I'm not going to go into that world. Because like a couple people thought, oh, you should fill his shoes and like be a pitchman and, you know, try to take over for products and stuff. And like some people have asked me to, but nothing's really ever like excited me enough to do it.
Yeah.
But then I realized like I do all this independent touring and I've built up my little merch setup, and my setup is essentially what he did. I play music and that's my demo. And then after the set, I'm selling merch and trying to like get to the next city, which is exactly what he did, except that his demo and his merch were the same thing. It was like he's literally demonstrating the product.
Right.
And it was kind of all in one, where mine's a little bit more removed. Like it's more
Right.
a performance and then you buy. But like
Yeah.
that's kind of what his was too, I guess. So it makes me think that a lot of the times when I find myself alone in a city touring and like playing some weird show, some weird basement show or something, I think, man, my dad was probably in a situation like this where he's at some festival or not festival, like a convention that like didn't really turn out the way he wanted. He's just trying to make it to the next one, hope that it goes well. And like, it kind of makes me feel connected to him, you know?
Definitely.
Did you already have the name Infinite Third by that point? Or when did you come up with that name, and how did you come up?
Actually, in 2009, I was going by a different name, and it was like so. I look back and I just hate it because I think I was so caught up in my feelings, rightly so. I was just like,
Oh yeah, for sure.
I was just like, holy shit, like I'm just feeling this, and it's like grief, and you know. So somehow, in my haze of 2009, I came up with the name Soft Words Traverse. And it was just like so dumb, and like I don't like it, but I think it was just like I look back at a lot of that time as sort of like foggy, even though the music was really on point. Like I feel like my life was kind of like foggy, and I didn't really know who I was yet, or like who I was becoming. Well, and it was just a transitional period. So I went with that name for that first album, and I think not even a year later, I realized that's not the name I want to go with, and like I had this tattoo. I had this infinity symbol tattoo, and I have a third symbol, you know, for the third. And I think I was just like sitting somewhere, and I committed to like Infinite Third. Like that should be the name, and it kind of gives off like a duality of what I feel in me, and it also is kind of confusing and doesn't make sense like logically, like Infinite Third. So that's what I wanted in a name, was something that was like a little intriguing, but also like had personal meaning.
It seems like you built in a lot of meaning to it.
Yeah.
It has like so many meanings built into it. It seems like.
Well, there's somebody came up to me recently and said that there actually is like an infinite, like I always thought the third interval in music makes sense because it's like the beginning of the minor interval, like 0 to 3 in the scale gives a certain vibe. So I thought, yeah, people could take that and run with that thought. But somebody told me that there is like a concept of an infinitely recurring third interval, which I guess there could be anything with
cool.
music. And
Right.
so she went into this whole thing about like, you got to look it up, you got to check it out. And like, I've even had people play on it in press, like reviewing my live sets or my albums, where they thought it was some sort of like physics term. and then it dawned on me that like my music with the looping was set up to sort of always have infinite possibilities and just continue on forever.
Yeah,
So
a loop is infinite. I like that.
and like I can keep progressing it. And I improvise so many of my sets that I don't want to play the same thing twice too much. You know, I want it to always be a little different and let it be for that moment and not just something I'm like doing karaoke with. You
Yeah.
know?
I always thought because you painted the 3 on your forehead that it was like a third eye.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Like
there's that in it. Yeah.
Like
Yeah, that works too.
Take
Yeah, that
mushrooms
works.
and do whatever.
Yeah. I mean, one of my albums, if you look it up, I was just revisiting it. Actually, it's a 6-part collection of albums called the Exploratory Sessions, and you can find them on my Bandcamp.
Yeah.
They're all kind of like whatever. They're all just super guitar based, like spacey guitar improvisations that I then curated into these albums that like sort of each one has its own little concept.
Yeah.
And I started like revisiting like how that all went down, and it was my first time like really diving into mushrooms.
Really?
And
Hell yeah.
yeah, and it was basically like 5 days at my apartment with a whole setup and with like a TV set up with like a VHS player that like glitches, and like I guess I was like trying to like, you know, expand my mind, or like I was being invited to expand my mind, and I basically just recorded and live streamed. I live streamed it on Ustream back then. Where
Really?
like,
Ustream,
you would have
yeah.
Ustream, and then I remember how stupid it was is that it would be this like relaxing music that I'm live streaming, and then like ads would just randomly interrupt it, and you couldn't pick when they happened.
Right.
So it like really, looking back, I would like never do that now. I would never want like a live stream to just be interrupted.
Right.
Be like in the middle of my set, just like stopping the music at a random
And
point.
play a commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was basically just 3 to 5 days of me not eating like huge doses of mushrooms, but just like a steady flow of it, and
Yeah,
like
to keep it going.
eating some healthy food, and like,
Yeah.
and I didn't intentionally do it, but it was all recorded and it was all live streamed. So I took the recordings and started going back through them over a course of, I don't think they actually came out until like 2014, and this was probably 2011. So it took about 3 years to come back around and say, man, there's a lot of good stuff here. How can I present this? So I presented it as a 6-album collection called the Exploratory Sessions.
That's sick.
was
And
kind
so
of
it
a
took
funny
place
time.
over 6 days, you said?
Yeah, I think it was about 5 days, three to 5 days
Okay.
on and off of
And you were just
streaming for hours.
on shrooms the whole time.
I guess, I don't know. I feel like when you do mushrooms, like, at least when I do, like, it sort of just, I just need a little bit, and it kind of like sets me off in a direction. And
Yeah.
like, I feel like,
You just kind of like teeter on the brink of
yeah, like I'm more of a
reality and-
micro dose guy.
Yeah, you're
like,
not
I
like
don't really,
tripping balls.
That's
for
that's
5
what I
days
would do.
straight.
I feel like I would be like too scared to go through that fucking door.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've had some bad experiences.
Have you?
In the past, yeah, but nothing like where I did anything crazy. It was just mental, like.
Where you did too much, you think?
No, not
Oh,
too much. No.
okay.
Just like the wrong heads. I always felt that when you do psychedelics, there's always a moment, at least for me this has been true, to like really have the euphoric like clarity that can come with that.
Yeah.
I always feel like I have to go through this period of like accepting death, and even if it's just like the concept of death.
Yeah.
And so maybe my mind gets all anxious and heavy, and I think I'm going to die, or I realize that I'm
Yeah.
going to die one day, or whatever version of that. And then like through those clouds, there's like this huge clarity, but you kind of have to like get through it. And so that's happened with me a lot, is that like
Okay.
I've had to first break through the fear, and then sort of like realize that there's like a clarity on the other end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I've ever had any like
Okay.
super bad experiences, but I think there's always like a little bit of a teetering on like, you know.
But like if you're gonna fall over on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
That's what I'm afraid of. I feel like I hear people that get like stuck in that fucking
Well,
state.
I do think that some people do huge doses of these types of things, and it triggers like
and it's permanent.
psychosis, and
Yeah.
you know, but it's something that they are already dealing with or already have in their
Yeah.
you know,
Oh,
lineage
right.
or something. And so I do think that happens. But that's why I feel like I'm super careful about it, and I try not to. I don't take it lightly. Like I've set it up as like a ritual if I ever do it. Like I try
Really?
not to do it in like at parties or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not into that. But I like to kind of treat it as like a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And thankfully, I've stuck with that for the most part. I won't just take it if someone would give me something like that at like a festival or something. I can't do that.
I've always
It
been way too
scares
much.
the shit out of me.
I've always been too much of a pussy to try it. Like if I smoke too much weed, I freak out. Like I'm tripped. Like if I eat like a edible, a brownie or something, I've had like I'll look in the mirror and be like, this was got to be what shrooms are like.
I think there is some overlap, you know, in some really good weed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're close.
I'm gonna try them soon. I'm gonna definitely try them soon. I'm just really scared.
I would just stay hydrated and
okay.
Yeah, and listen to some Infinite
I'm gonna-
Third. You'll
yeah,
be all
so
right.
actually,
I'm gonna do shrooms
people have hit me up and said that my music has guided them through like bad trips. And
Really?
stuff.
Yeah,
And that's probably like the best compliment. Like, I've forgotten all kinds of things about like, obviously people doing it like for their yoga classes or whatever, putting on my music, and then sometimes
Being like taking shrooms and doing yoga.
no.
Oh.
No,
Like,
just doing yoga and
Different
listening
ways
to-
that people have put on my music in like odd settings. Like
Oh,
I've heard
yeah,
that
yeah,
my
yeah.
music's been played at like childbirths,
What? Really?
like, at home births.
Damn.
And I always found like the couple people who have reached out and said, "Hey, I went on a journey, and like thankfully your music kind of anchored me throughout the trip." And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's kind of what it's for. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's instrumental and stuff in the way that it is for a reason, and it like has a certain abstraction for a reason. It's not just like dance music or
Right.
even
Yeah.
though there are beats sometimes and stuff. It's not.
Yeah.
The purpose has always been like catharsis.
Okay.
Meaning like kind of going through like a transformational emotional experience.
Yeah.
And my shows, I do set out to kind of go through that for myself, and in turn it kind of like lets other people feel that in the
Ride
in
it
the
with you.
audience. Yeah. And so I do have people come up to me after shows, and it's like they say that they had some, you know, crazy sort of like transformative moment emotionally during the set, and I it's weird because when that happens, it's usually I also had that same kind of experience
Yeah.
while I was playing. Like I was in a bad mood, or I was like scared of something going on, and like the music kind of like let me be free of that. So I do find this weird shamanistic quality of my music. Like I wouldn't say that I'm a shaman. I feel like that would be sort of arrogant to say, but I think that I have to facilitate my music. I'm not just performing it usually. I'm trying to facilitate something for
Yeah,
everybody,
it's not just mindless
including
music.
myself. Yeah, so I try to be super mindful about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I don't want to just, you know, puke all over everybody
And
with
just push
music
buttons, and make
or
noise.
jerk off. You know, like it's an intentional thing for me, and it's not always perfect, and it's not always exactly what everybody needs, but more often than not, it is what somebody needs at that time.
Yeah.
And that's also because it's what I need, I think, at that
Yeah,
time.
that's super fucking cool.
I wouldn't really want to make it if it didn't have meaning like
Right.
that, you know.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it keeps me. It's how I knew that it should be like my career, in that it doesn't make sense that somebody would make a career out of like abstract, experimental, ambient music.
Right.
But
Because
the
you're
whole
not
time
gonna
I
get
just
like
knew.
super rich probably off it, right?
Well, yeah,
But
I
it's
don't
just-
know. But then I realized over
but you
time
might.
that like it's not really about the genre or about the specifics. It's more like people.
This guy's fucking us so hard with
Oh,
this
the
blower.
lawnmower.
Fucking blower.
Fucking blower.
That's all right.
Yeah, fuck. It's
just,
okay. It's okay. We'll treat it as like
It's incidental.
yeah.
Well, now that we're mentioning it, people
Yeah.
don't know what they're hearing.
Right.
I gotta figure out something. I don't know. We'll figure something out later.
Honestly, I should sample that.
Yeah,
For
I was
us,
gonna
but
say it's part of the moment. We're just gonna live with it.
Yeah. Anyway, I think what I was trying to say was that I slowly realized over time, like, I don't want to limit myself mentally to say that I make some obscure music, when I really, all that matters with any kind of art is that you're connected to it and you care about it, and you grow it like a garden, not just a
Right.
fucking product. So I find that I'm realizing more and more that it almost doesn't matter. As long as I believe in what I'm doing, it's gonna work and people are gonna connect with it. So like I've been able to make way more money than I thought I would from, like, that's why I don't do as much of the stuff that I don't want to do.
Right.
And I do more like gigs and shows that
Yeah.
are my music. But I've had to get through a lot of periods of risk, financial
Oh,
risk
huge.
of like,
yeah.
I don't want to take this like really like, you know, intense gig that I would make a lot of money on, but it would just kind of drain me for weeks.
Yeah.
I had to start saying no to those, the easier money or the more guaranteed money, and say, no, I think a show's going to come up. And like, I had to get through a lot of periods of,
Yeah.
you know, borrowing and, you know, just doing what I can to get by. And
It's
then
just-
now I feel like
You're getting there.
it's my career now.
It's
like
a
I
huge
don't
mental
question that.
struggle. It takes like a lot of courage or a lot of balls to trade most people just trade their dreams for securities and like,
Yeah.
okay, this is going to be more, I'm going to make more money. I'm going to be able to raise a family, pay my mortgage if I do this and just dabble in this. But
Yeah.
it takes so much. Like, that's why so few people do it. Dive into the thing that they love doing that makes no money. It's a.
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
know,
it's
did
not
you have
even
to-
it's not even really like the way the world's set up and the way capitalism is set up. Like, it's almost like it's already things are stacked against you, and some things are stacked against people more than others, and some people have more stacked against them than others. So I feel that I had a lot of a leg up just by getting to see my dad's rise and learning from him, getting the little bit of post-mortem support from him financially, which was like enough to invest in some gear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, whatever. There was that, but it wasn't like a trust fund.
Right.
And so I definitely have those kind of head starts, but I also feel like I didn't take the easy route of like just trying to make music that's commercially viable.
Right.
Right.
Mine,
Just for the dollar.
Mine really hasn't been, and only until recently do I see that it could be, there is a path for me to be abundant
Right.
with it financially, but it's hard work. It's
Yeah,
like you
that's
got to
sick.
convince people
Definitely.
why that, like why it's good or why it's
Yeah.
worth listening to or why it's worth booking for your gig or your festival.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's hard because a lot of people don't get that type of music, and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for them, like the person booking and stuff, to relate
Yeah.
to shit like that. And
Well, thankfully, I'm getting better at showing it and
Yeah.
explaining it and collecting the right videos. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it's
especially
it's
doing it
becoming
live,
better
I'm
and
sure
better.
helps.
Yeah,
a
and
lot.
but I
They get to
think
kind of see it and understand what's going on.
that's what I was going to say, is that I think it's because once people see it or experience it, then it's kind of like unquestionable what it is.
Right.
But it's really hard to describe. Like, oh yeah, it's this guy just like
Yeah, you just play
pressing
the
a
song.
bunch of buttons with his
Yeah.
guitar, and then like it's also really emotional, and like people sit on the floor with him sometimes, and like it's all really like sounds
Yeah.
weird, but once you're there, it's just like it makes perfect sense, and there's no reason to question it once you see it. But that's the hard part, is like just getting out there more and more so people experience it.
Yeah, and you're also super fortunate that you didn't have, a lot of people have parents that are just like, don't waste your time doing this. You got to go do this. This is going to make you money. You need to go fucking join the Navy or go work at a bank.
Go to college.
Yeah.
So
or
you can
something.
actually be a functioning human, you know what I mean? A functioning part of society.
Well, my dad was more practical about
Right.
that. He would kind of say like, yeah, you still got to get this degree, and like, yeah, maybe one day you'll be able to do stuff with music. But
Yeah.
I hear where he was coming from. I was just a kid, and
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't think that I could have done it back then either. But little did he know that like his death was the thing that triggered me into being able to really do it seriously. But my mom was she still is. She's like the number one fan, and she just always, even back in high school, like I would play music really loud in the next room over, and she'd just be like, I love it. I love to hear
Really?
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
and,
sick.
Awesome.
and so, yeah, so I was really lucky to have parents that didn't just shut it down.
Oh,
And,
hell
like,
yeah.
Yeah, and I did have like friends that kind of like shut it down, like ignored
you?
it, or like thought that it was stupid. But thankfully, once you get out into the world, like a lot of people will like move away from where they're from or something,
Mhm.
and like you kind of find people that like get you in a new light. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
kind of thing where like you can kind of like reinvent yourself. I
Yeah.
think that kind of happened for me when I moved to Florida. I was
Mhm.
able to start reinventing myself, but it took a long time.
Hell yeah.
Have you ever thought about like collaborating with other artists? Like I think one of the first things I mentioned to you earlier was like this hip hop artist from St. Pete. Like it
Yeah.
would be so cool, like to hear like, you know what I mean, like samples and loops, like with, collaborating with these vocalists that come on.
Well, I do it all the time, really. Mouth Council is strictly collaborative. Like,
Okay.
It's never just me.
Okay, so explain exactly what Mouth Council
So
is.
Mouth Council is, I mentioned it earlier, the loop station that I use, the RC505 by Boss. Before that existed, I had started doing this thing where I would, I'd be playing music myself, and then like somebody would be around, like a friend or something, and they'd start singing along, and I'd be like, I'd want to include them, so I would just like hand them a microphone and then loop what they were doing along with my loops. And it was like fun. It was like including them instead of just me playing at
Right.
them. And then as that went on, like maybe I did it with like two friends, and at one point it was just like, hey, let's do the thing where we just like we loop our voices. And so we
Yeah.
started kind of like having fun with that, with like a really primitive looper that just did one thing, like start and stop. so there were no effects or anything cool that I could do.
Yeah.
And I would just keep layering over it. So it turned into this thing where some friends would come over and we'd like sit around and I would loop all their voices, and we would all just kind of like do goofy things, and it'd become maybe like somewhat musical. So once that RC505 came out, I was like, I need that. Like they announced it, and I was like, that's what I need for this activity. And I got on like the waiting list for the pre-orders, and I think I got it like the month it came out.
Really?
And so I just dove into it, and I was like, let's do this. And one of my friends, one of the original friends who did that with me, at one point, he doesn't even remember saying it. He was like, oh, I love that. I love when we do that. It's like some sort of mouth council. And I was like, that's what we should call it.
Hell yeah.
And he doesn't even remember saying it, but like that, I know that was where the name came from. That
Really?
one little comment.
So you had never seen anybody do anything like this before?
Oh, people loop, you know.
Like, but in the way you do it, in like a circle where if you pass the microphone.
Honestly, it was just a really natural thing. It wasn't even that intentional. It just kind of happened, and it was like people would naturally want to sit in a circle. It was like sitting around a campfire or something.
Yeah.
People want to do that. People
It's
want to
so
sit in a
fucking
circle.
fascinating. Like, I mean, I've seen like videos of like, I've watched like little clips of it before, but never really like captured me until I watched the full process of what happens and what it sounds like. Freaking amazing, man.
Yeah, so back then it was still pretty primitive. I would just we would do it, and like hopefully it would turn into something cool, and like it kind of fit in as like a cool thing at shows in between bands or something. I started doing that. And then I think some point, maybe like I would say 4 or 5 years ago, probably 5 years ago, I got really good at the pedal just from using it so much. I got intuitively good at it, and kind of realized like this is a real thing that I'm doing. Like I should like focus on this and make it a project. And I turned it into the Mouth Council, like officially more and more, and I would brand it, and I made a logo and stuff. And still that's what I do, is like I look at my musical path as like half Infinite Third, half Mouth Council. They're two completely different offerings, but they're kind of the same in that they're opposite. They're Infinite Third is like me looping with myself and like super internal and like introverted, and then Mouth Council is me looping with everyone else.
Right. The
And
audience
it's
like
super-
is the performer.
Right.
Yeah. And I love that. Like when I'm on a stage, I get to bring people up on the stage, and I just always trust that somebody's going to want to, be the center of attention.
Right. Of course.
And like I get to like it actually, I love it because it lets me sort of like highlight other people instead of just making it about myself all the time. So in some ways, like I'm the facilitator and like the leader of it, but I love the moments where it's more about someone just like gets up there and can really sing and they just kill it.
Yeah.
And I'm still mixing it like a badass over here. Like I admit that I do some cool things sometimes, but I think that some of it's so like playful and accidental that
it's very organic.
Yeah, I
It's
try
just,
not to
like
like
freestyling.
I try not to let it get to my head, because it's just like it's this like energy. It's not
it just comes together.
It's like it's because people are into it. I
Yeah.
can feed off of it and just start turning knobs and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not like some genius, thing that I've like written out and structured. It's totally the opposite of that. It's like I don't ever think about it. I don't plan it on purpose, because when I do, it can kind of like get in my head and like make me not do as.
Have you ever
do as
thought
well.
of doing like an album, like where you do sequentially? Because obviously once you record them, you don't mess with them. They are what they are, right? That's what's so cool about it.
For the most part.
They kind of like live how they're produced live is how they end up.
Yeah, there
I think
are
it'd
some
be
good live audio recordings that I've released on Bandcamp and stuff.
Oh, really?
Like, just like some decent, like song by song live recordings.
Like, I think it'd be a cool concept. Like, there's no mastering or there's no editing of the sounds of the audio. Like, if the concept of the project was just like, I'm gonna bring in track 1, I'm gonna bring in these people, track 2, I'm gonna bring in these people, and then I'm gonna record it, and that's it.
Well, I told you I really want to do like a series, almost like roundtable discussion style of like, because then from that, so I'd have guests, maybe like you guys would be guests on my thing, and we would talk and make music together. But then I feel like from that, why wouldn't the audio of the songs be an album?
Right.
Like,
Right.
That I see a version of that becomes. I already look at it as a band. Like it's a band that has no boundaries. Like everyone's in it.
Yeah.
So I always tell people like, you're in the band now. Like you're part of it. So Mouth Council is literally just me and everyone else. And
It's cool because there's so many possibilities you can do with that. With that idea. Like it's just it's fucking infinite.
Yeah.
Third.
Yeah.
Hey, were you on Drew Garabo show doing that?
Yeah, I do Mouth
Was
Council
that
on
you?
Drew's show
Hey,
all the time,
I've heard it multiple times on there, but I didn't know who it was.
Drew's awesome.
That's sick.
I go on there maybe every 2-3 months.
Yeah.
Really?
They want me
I
to
just
come on
heard
more
it not
regularly
recently,
now.
like not that long ago. I know I did. I drive home from work and I would listen to them on the way home every
I
day.
was
And
just
I've heard
on,
it a
like,
couple
3
times.
weeks ago.
Yeah, I know I heard it.
He went and got all these like staff of the radio channel.
Yeah.
And like brought them in. And
Yeah, and everybody made a sound.
Yeah, and they passed it around, and there's always like a video going of their live stream that they do, and Drew always raps.
Yeah, he does.
He's a pretty good rapper.
Yeah, he is
and,
pretty
like,
good.
He just freestyles.
Yeah.
And I love Drew. It's
sick.
always a great time going on that show.
I
Could we
just
do
put
it
that
if we had
together
like
in my
one more
head.
person there? Like,
I mean,
1, 2, 3.
we could do it like this.
You need more though.
It's just like the vibe's better when it's
vibe's
like
better.
maybe
With
like
more.
5 people. I
Yeah.
think that's like my magic number is like
Yeah.
5 to 8.
Okay.
And also like if it gets too many in the actual circle,
Yeah.
like I like there to be like a circle and then like people standing around
Yeah.
or
Okay.
out in the crowd.
Yeah.
But once you get to like 10 or 12, it can get a little weird in that some people don't.
Some people freeze up. And
Yeah, and I totally promote passing it if you don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna like judge you because you couldn't like figure it out.
make a sound.
I don't
Sometimes somebody will fuck it up. Somebody will like put in some. They'll be like they'll feel. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want
No,
to say
no,
that.
there
'cause it
are-
fucks up the energy. When
I
you
would
say
say
that, but-
sometimes there's someone that kind of
They just don't catch the flow.
goes into business for themselves and
Yeah.
just like screams into the mic and like tries to
like plugs their website.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm actually kind of down for it. Like I can totally, I have enough control that like I could cut off the mic if I really need to,
Right.
if they start saying some obscene shit.
Yeah.
But also like sometimes someone will do something really shitty into the mic and it's like distorted and weird, and I'll still like tweak it enough to bring it back and make it like
Right, throw some
a funny
effects on
thing,
it
and then I'll
and-
delete it and
Yeah.
like so it don't make them feel like left out or like they're like assholes for making a
Mhm.
weird sound. But sometimes it'll go around and not enough people will have done something like musical. It's almost like it's adding up the wrong layers. Not
Yeah.
wrong, but like the
It's just
layers
not
that
going
don't
with the
mesh
flow,
well.
kinda.
And then sometimes, a lot of times my contribution is that by the time it comes back around to me, I'll add like a heavy snare or something and makes it like groove differently.
Yeah.
Where some people won't do that whole time. So we're sitting there waiting for everyone to kind of get through their piece.
Yeah.
And so I try to like mitigate that by not having too many people, but
Yeah.
there's inevitable times where therewith like 15 people in the circle. And you just gotta
Yeah,
live with
you're
it.
just
Or
waiting
sometimes
for it
I'll
to
just like
come
ask
back.
for the mic back real quick and I'll say I'll give it back to him so I
Yeah.
can add some hi-hats or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, like one of the weirdest gigs that I do is first night St. Pete, the New Year's Eve celebration.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
The family-friendly New Year's Eve celebration at Straub Park
Yeah.
downtown. They hire me to come do like a little mouth council zone, and last year it got a little crazy because it was just kids. It was just all kids.
Oh God, yeah.
And like maybe a handful of like people who might have been drunk stumbling by.
Yeah.
But it was kids. Like
Oh, but that gets crazy with
kids,
drunk people.
Kids are great. Kids are better than drunk people sometimes.
Yeah.
Like kids are like they're uninhibited like drunk people are, but kids are actually pretty creative and like drunk
What do you mean when you
people-
say kids? Are we talking like
Like children.
all ages? Like there was a girl there, a little girl right next to me. She stood up. She was like, you could tell she was just like mesmerized by what was going on. And I think she was probably 3.
okay?
Like probably the youngest that's
Oh,
ever
yeah.
like voluntarily walked up and done it. And I gave her the microphone and she started singing. And
What?
then,
Oh,
and like
sick.
it wasn't like Whitney Houston singing, but it was
Right.
like really listenable singing.
Yeah.
And everyone was cheering, and she probably didn't even understand that they were cheering
What's going
for her.
on,
Like
yeah.
it was that kind of moment. And then like I found out her brother was sitting right next to her, and he was also like having a blast doing like kind of like almost rapping, but
Yeah.
it was like scat
Yeah.
in a way. So we're going around, and this was just like nonstop. There was no structure to it. I wasn't limiting who could come in, so we had like 25 kids around.
Oh, shit.
They're all trying to get their moment, and like everyone was having fun, but musically it was
It was a mess.
at times it was you couldn't listen to it. It
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
annoying, you know.
Yeah, just noise.
but
going
everyone
on.
had fun,
Yeah.
you know. So
Shit, that's all that matters sometimes.
I want to play one clip
Yeah.
so we can add it into the podcast so we can like have a.
this is the
Is this the one? Who?
it's the one we did it with the mayor. He wasn't in it. He was
Okay.
watching though. It's the Mayor's Lounge, Mayor Kreisman.
Oh, okay.
I got to pick 4 friends to come and be the performance on this web series called Mayor's Lounge.
Okay. And that's right in St. Pete.
Yeah, this was at the Hideaway on Central.
That's sick. So you got four people plus you, and you're like beatboxing
Yeah.
to start it out, just to get the
Yeah,
vibe
yeah, yeah.
going.
And I strategically placed these 4 people because like I knew Zach right here. We'd kind of come with like
Yeah.
a funny but musically good sound.
Yeah, that's it.
That's like his specialty, or one of his specialties.
Oh, my shit's going green like that.
And then, I had my friend Senyo, who's like, he's actually the lead singer of Bangarang
Oh,
from
really?
Tampa, so I got him to get out there. You can see how sweaty I am, which happens a lot. I've broken loopers because I've sweated into the faders. That's my third.
Oh, shit,
That's my
really?
third machine, yeah. Because the water will mess it up.
Could you imagine like Rod Wave sitting there like
It'd be
singing
sick.
one of his songs and then
Yeah,
somebody
it would.
else beatboxing and then him
Yeah.
mixing it and then like the girl throwing in her stuff?
It's always really special when there's a rapper that knows how to freestyle, because
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
build this beat and then
And then they just
I have
flow
a way
over
of
it.
mixing once they start rapping that cuts it out at the right times. I'll put like an octave on his voice to make
Yeah,
it like
and drop it out.
satanic, for like certain lines and
Yeah.
stuff. And like that's my favorite thing is when someone just goes off and then I can like put a filter on and like cut out the beat at the right moment and bring
Right.
it back, and
Yeah.
because I kind of vibe off that person doing that.
Yeah,
at the same
definitely.
time.
If you had like
We
a
gotta link Rod at Wave up with that.
Yeah, if you had like Rod Wave and then like a death metal like a Corpse Grinder.
Right?
Yeah,
Like bring Trap Doom in.
that'd be a beautiful. Yeah, Tia and Saint
Yeah.
do mouth counts with me all the time.
Really?
And they're amazing. And yeah, they're like two of my go-to people for if I
Yeah.
need to make like a really good musical mouth counsel, because
Yeah.
they'll come through with like some catchy hooks, and
Yeah.
they're both really good rappers, and they'll just kind of like capture the moment with me.
That's sick.
And there's a lot of people like that, but yeah, we have our OG crew, I think, that I would hit up for things like this for the
Mhm.
mayor and stuff. And
Yeah.
What kind of shit has this led to? Like you've said you've done like a bunch of corporate, it's like
Yeah.
led to like team building
Just-
activities for brand
Yeah.
companies.
just yesterday I did it for a bank for their management party at like 10 a.m. I was doing mouth counsel with a bunch of people just formally.
A bunch of bankers.
Yeah, they were super into it, and it was like the more like higher ups were super into it, trying to get everybody to like let loose, and
Mm-hmm.
it was really fun. You'd be surprised. There aren't too many situations where people aren't like down to clown,
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's such a super like
It's like super immersive.
yeah, and I try to let people know that you can't do anything wrong. Like
Right.
you're not gonna
It's
you're not gonna
easygoing.
ruin it
Yeah.
if you do something weird.
Right.
We're just gonna keep moving,
Yeah.
and so it's imperfect in that way. So it doesn't make you intimidated and think that you have to be American Idol to
Right.
participate.
Right.
Yeah, it's like my my comfort zone. It's like
Is it
being in
really?
there and like having to just answer to the moment of like people are looking for this to be musical. Let's make it into music and like take chances. And I do a lot of like flipping the beat and like raising the tempo
Yeah.
slowly and like turning it into something else.
Right.
And, like I think that's kind of what sets it off. I do take credit for that. Like my job is to not make it just loops
Right,
over and
right.
over again. It's changing it up and
Right.
bringing things
Switching
in
it
and
up,
out,
adding
and,
effects
yeah,
in, and
having structure to the songs, ending
Yeah.
the songs at the right time so
Right.
Yeah.
that it feels like a complete song.
right.
So it's not just like goes on forever and ever. There is a time where I'll feel like I can go for like 20 minutes and I just do because it's
Yeah.
a party or something.
Yeah,
where people just
yeah.
want the music to keep going.
Yeah.
So, and on the flip side, when I do Infinite Third, it's like a 4-hour long song sometimes.
Right,
where
right.
Not a 4-hour long song, but it's a seamless song to song. They all kind of blend into each other.
Yeah.
I don't really like stop for applause that much, and even when I do, I like to just kind of like.
Oh,
let it
really?
sit
You
and,
you just like make some kind of like long piece and then
Pretty
you
much,
chop it
yeah.
up into tracks?
No, for Infinite Third,
And just
for my
continually play
performances,
it.
it's like it's happening forever. Like there's like little droney interludes that connect every song. I try not to make it like, okay, now a song's over. Like every
Right.
once
And it
in a
never
while
just
there will
stops.
be that
It goes
moment.
quiet and
Yeah.
starts again.
Yeah. So I like to kind of keep the hypnosis of it
Yeah.
going so that it doesn't kind of kill the vibe. And then also like it creates a really reflective environment at the right setting. Like when I play for like say a grassroots kava house for like 4 hours,
Yeah.
which I'm doing on, an upcoming Friday.
Yeah.
I just kind of install myself in there and people just come and go and hang out and talk or not talk and do whatever, and it's a really good environment for that. So when it stops, people are like still kind of in the zone and they're ready to just like keep getting in the zone. So just keep it going.
And then what's the other thing I want to talk about? Oh yeah, BillyMays.org.
Yeah.
So tell me, is it true that this was we were talking about earlier? This was the website that you had created for your dad.
Not quite. What I mean is that was the only person in his circle at the time of his death, or the years before his death, that said, hey, why don't you have like a website, and why don't you like have a presence where you can talk to people who are like fans of you, and like why aren't we connecting with these people more? And,
Right,
like,
right.
You know, sending them autographed photos and stuff, and because he was big into that, he would carry around autographed photos.
Are you
in
serious?
his suitcase. So like people would just get a picture with him. And he was always down to pose for a picture at the airport. So if I would travel with him, and we'd have to like stop every minute to like take a photo. I would take a lot of the photos and like get their information and send it to him. At the time, it wasn't so connected all the time.
Yeah.
But he would bust out these photos that he would sign and give them to people, and it was like kind of a bonus. It was kind of over the top in a way, but like, he was just like, why
he
not?
loved it.
Yeah, he liked connecting with the people. I always noticed that he would actually care about the people that were interested in meeting him. Like there'd be a second of like, yeah, I'm that guy, blah, 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 take a picture. And then he'd be like, what do you do? And like, I would see him get into all these like really genuine conversations with just your everyday person who just was a fan for a minute. And like, that was something I really looked up to, just in who he was as a person. 'Cause he was kind of like that with everybody. He would, on the set, he would talk to like all the crew members, and like he was never like too good or anything, or he was just kind of like one of the guys. And yeah, so anyway, I always thought, well, why wouldn't we connect digitally and like make it happen? And so he kind of like agreed to that by the time he died, and I was basically envisioning what it would be and where we would put all the videos and how we would do it and stuff. And like a welcome video, like, hey, welcome to my website. This was 2009.
So you're like the Billy Mays creative director.
Yeah, I would have been. I was. And I guess, yeah, now I actually am.
Now you literally are.
So what I mean is that like when he died, I knew that I wanted to do some nonprofit work, like under his name as a tribute, but I never really knew how. And like, I didn't really have the resources to just like start doing charity. I didn't have like tons of money to donate and stuff like that. So there wasn't anything that was obvious. So there were a couple iterations of me trying to figure out how to do this nonprofit thing. And then over the years, I think I became more mature, and I learned things, and I kind of decided that I can tell his story, kind of like pay tribute, have like these fun, posts and meme collections.
Yeah. There's a whole page on this website, billymays.org, that's dedicated to memes.
Yeah, like people tag me in memes all the time, and I just like rip them and put them up here.
Yeah.
And,
there's a ton of Billy Mays memes.
And I want people to send me them because they still exist, and it's so funny that it's so funny that people are still making them, and they've even evolved since his death in some weird way. But and just like references when people see him referenced in something, and like he was in Better Call Saul. Like like that came out like years after his death.
Really?
There was an episode where
the Breaking Bad spinoff?
Yeah, Mike Airman Trout is breaking into someone's house, like the classic type of Breaking Bad scene where, an assassin's coming in like silently into someone's house, but like there's a TV playing.
Yeah.
And so the TV was playing, and my dad's commercial was on.
No shit.
They had to like get it cleared and stuff.
That's sick.
And yeah, so there's like moments like that. He's in a couple movies like that in that capacity where he's just on the TV in the movie. But it's so any of that I definitely like welcome people to send me, because it's
sure.
like I'm the sole Billy Mays historian, like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep track of where he appeared and what happened and what work he did, and I'm still trying to find all his commercials. There's like a million of them. I'm trying to find them all, and a lot of them only exist on tape. And I
really?
On VHS tape somewhere.
Yeah, like in a vault.
Yeah.
How many? If you were to ballpark like a number on how many commercials he's made, how many would you say?
Hundreds, thousands.
Yeah, I mean, if you really break it down into the different versions of each one, it could get into the high hundreds, early thousands, maybe. If you're like, if there's like a 30-second one, a minute one, a 90-second one,
right.
Like there was all that stuff, but I would say hundreds. And product-wise, I think, I don't know, like 50, 60 products.
Wow.
I don't know, like there's a big list. Maybe not that many, but it's a lot when you look at it.
Yeah.
And some of them were bigger than others. And so I eventually realized that I can like combine those two things, like paying tribute to him and like kind of having the fun of, sharing this stuff with people who still care about him, and also do nonprofit work. So back at the beginning of 2019, I connected with my friend Mike, who owns the Dunedin Brewery in Dunedin, Florida.
Okay.
It's like Florida's oldest microbrewery. He had always been down to do something like this, and we finally just like decided what it would be, and it would be a tribute beer, because they had done a few other types of tribute beers over the years.
Yeah.
And so it also has meaning because my dad actually lived in Dunedin for quite a while.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
So they brewed this sort of orange IPA, and we just decided to call it the Billy Mays IPA. And
That's
it
sick.
was released on the 10-year anniversary of his death.
Really?
June 28th, 2019. And for the first run, we only did it as on tap at the brewery.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like a few other local places had a keg of it just like for fun.
Mhm.
But when you go to the tasting room at the brewery, which is awesome, by the way, and they have like amazing food.
I've never been there.
and
I need to
it's
go
a
there.
Great, all their
Yeah,
beers
it's
are
cool.
amazing, and I don't drink like tons of beer, but I've never had like a bad beer from Dunedin Brewery.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on June 28th, 2019, we dropped the beer, and in the tasting room, every pint that you buy, $1.50 from each purchase, it hasn't even happened yet, is getting donated to the Laundry Project, which is a charity that I chose to partner with, which is Tampa-based. And I thought it was relevant because of the laundry thing.
Right.
And they do free laundry days, pop-ups at laundromats, all in different cities and communities.
Nice.
And
I
they
vol-
just pay
I-
for everyone's laundry?
Yeah, I volunteer with them sometimes. It's so awesome. They just like, they get a team there. They bring soap and quarters,
That's
and donuts
wild.
and coffee, and they just advertise that like you can come today and get your laundry
Free
done for
laundry.
free. So it costs a lot to do like tons of people's
Fuck
laundry,
yeah.
but you realize how efficient you have to be. Like they have to plan it out so that like everyone's keeping track of whose stuff and what, so and
Right.
putting names on the thing so that it can keep going, because it gets pretty filled pretty fast, and you still
Yeah.
want
Oh,
to
I'm
get
sure.
as many as you can. It's a really fun time. And so we just finished the first batch of the IPA, and they're working on the second batch right now, and
Really?
we're about to make the first donation to the Laundry Project.
So cool.
Which I don't know how much it's going to be.
So we can
but
literally
it's
go to the
yeah.
brewery and buy it.
Not right now. It's sold out right now.
It's sold out?
Yeah. So the first batch sold out, I think, maybe like last month or something. So
Okay.
it lasts about 3 months
Okay.
or something like that. And so we're working on what we're going to do for the second batch, and if we're going to try to
Make
take
it
it
different?
bigger, might do cans, might do a
Okay.
can release.
Yeah,
that
that
would
would
be
be cool.
sick,
Yeah.
man.
So I
Put
would
some
like
cool
to
artwork on it.
I would like to take it further and
Each can have different art on it.
A
Yeah.
different Billy Mays
Might have-
meme on there.
Oh my god, dude, that would be so
that would be awesome.
sick.
Yeah. I'm into that.
That's cool.
I want to do like a big event that's like a can release fundraiser
Yeah.
that has
Yeah.
bands and shirts and just auctions and art auctions and stuff. Because
Yeah.
I own
Hell
a
yeah.
lot of Billy Mays art that people have made over the years.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Like cool little paintings and stuff, and I like big paintings as well. So I imagine one day I'll be able to possibly use those for good.
yeah. Put
Yeah.
a little gallery and
Yeah.
sell them.
That's sick, man.
Yeah.
Well, cool, dude. Thanks so much for doing this. and
Yeah.
for
Hell
all
yeah.
these
Thanks for
stories.
coming.
Yeah.
What tell people like the main social media links or
Where they can find you.
where they can find you online.
Yeah, at Infinite Third, spelled out THIRD, on Instagram and Twitter, and I have Facebook pages and stuff like that. But really, just you can find me if you search Billy Mays the Third, III. You'll find all my stuff. Yeah, I have tons of albums on Bandcamp and on iTunes and Apple Music and Spotify and all that under Infinite Third. If you want to check out the Mouth Council stuff, it's pretty much best to just like go on YouTube, because there's not really much like music.
Just search
it's
it.
more videos and stuff. But yeah,
Hell yeah,
I'm
man.
always around. I'm always touring. I'm trying to go to more cities in 2020.
Do you post the dates up on the website
Yeah,
and stuff? or-
InfiniteThird.com
Okay.
always has all the dates, including Mouth Council dates,
Okay.
with links to event pages and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I personally keep up with it, and I type it out every
Awesome.
couple days. I'll update it. And
Hell yeah.
so
dude.
yeah, I'm super reachable. If people want to try to contact me and collaborate or something like that, just hit me
Yeah.
up.
Definitely.
Cool.
Dude, I'm super pumped for Saturday.
Yeah,
Come out there and
me
check
too,
it out.
yeah.
Cool, man.
It's gonna be fun.
All right, dude. Thanks again.
Cool. Thank you.